Darnell Coleman had never been the religious type. He grew up hearing church sermons echo from the living room on Sundays, mostly because Auntie Rochelle insisted they leave the TV on while they cooked, but he never took any of it seriously. His world was grounded in what he could touch, count, and control. Fast money, fast food, fast friends. That was the rhythm. Atlanta was home, and like most people in his neighborhood, he'd learned how to survive with hustle and muscle, not prayer and fasting. Fasting? That was for old saints and people trying to lose 10 pounds, not grown men trying to keep their head above water. But beneath his confidence, something had been gnawing at him, a strange emptiness that money couldn't fix and women couldn't fill. He'd laugh off spiritual talk, but at night he wondered if there was more. When someone joked about doing a spiritual fast, he scoffed, but then said, "Watch me do it better than any of y'all." That decision would change everything. What Darnell didn't expect was that during that fast, he would leave his body and come face to face with a world he didn't believe in. Subscribe, like this video, and comment below where you're watching from. My name is Darnell Coleman, and I didn't believe in anything I couldn't see. I was raised around religion, not in it. Auntie Rochelle used to keep gospel music blasting while she fried fish on Fridays, and my grandma, before she passed, would always whisper little prayers over me. But to me, all that God talk was just background noise. Life was about survival. Get your money, keep your circle small, and don't trust nobody with a cross around their neck and judgment in their eyes. But I gotta be honest, something in me had been slipping. I couldn't sleep right, couldn't feel happy, no matter what I bought or who I was with. I felt hollow, like I was walking around with everything on the outside and nothing on the inside. One night, I was at Marcus's place and the conversation turned to fasting. Tamika had just done one with her church, trying to hear God, whatever that meant. Marcus cracked a joke, said he'd fast for $1 million. I laughed and said, "I'll fast right now, no food, no drink, 3 days. Just watch." I didn't do it for God. I did it to prove I could. Ego. Day 1 was fine, just hungry. Day 2, my head was pounding. I kept hearing things, weird, distant whispers. I thought I was just dizzy. Day 3, I collapsed. No warning. One minute I was standing in my kitchen reaching for a bottle of water I promised myself I wouldn't drink. The next minute I hit the floor like my soul got yanked out my chest. And that's when it happened. I was still in my apartment, but my body was on the floor. I could see myself. I was floating. Not like a dream, but like I was ripped into 2 pieces. I should have been panicking, but I couldn't feel fear yet. It was like my emotions were delayed, like I had been unplugged from everything human. Then the room started to change. Shadows crept in, like smoke seeping under the door. But it wasn't smoke. It was alive. It had weight, intelligence. The air grew thick. I turned and saw figures. They weren't just dark, they were darkness. And they knew me. I don't know how, but they started to whisper things I had thought to myself for years. Shame, guilt, all the filth I'd tried to bury. It was like they were feeding on my past. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I was paralyzed. That's when I remembered something Grandma Eloise used to say. "Baby, if you ever get in trouble, just call his name." She'd say it with tears in her eyes, like she knew one day I'd need to. So I did. I didn't even believe in it fully. I just screamed inside myself, "Jesus, help me!" And everything shifted. A light, pure and cutting, hit that room like lightning. The darkness shrieked. They couldn't stay in it. And then I saw her, Grandma Eloise. She was standing in the light, smiling. That's when I realized fasting wasn't just about skipping meals. Something real happens in the spirit when your flesh goes silent. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms and a nurse tapping my wrist like she was trying to bring me back to earth. My throat was dry like sand, and my body felt like it had been chewed up and spit out. But I wasn't thinking about any of that. I just kept seeing her, Grandma Eloise, and the way the darkness scattered when I called on Jesus. The doctors said I had severe dehydration and a drop in blood pressure that could have killed me. They asked what happened, but I didn't know how to explain that I just walked through hell and back. When Auntie Rochelle came in, I told her the basics. I fasted, passed out, and had a vision. She grabbed my hand, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "That wasn't no vision, baby. That was the Lord pulling you out." But when Marcus showed up, all I got was a smirk. "You trying to get spiritual on me now? Man, that hunger got you hallucinating." I laughed with him, just to not feel weird, but deep down I was shook. What I saw, what I felt, it wasn't hunger. It was real. Back at home, things got weird. Tamika came over and could tell something was different. "You look lighter," she said. "Not skinny, just like something's been lifted off you." I hadn't even told her everything yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, mind spinning. Part of me wanted to brush it off, say it was just a near-death hallucination. But another part of me knew better. I had seen chains, real chains, wrapped around me in that place. I'd felt them loosen when I called on Jesus. I'd seen spirits, felt darkness, saw light push it back. And fasting was the trigger. When my flesh weakened, something in my spirit cracked open. It was like the louder my body cried, the clearer my soul could hear. I started reading the Bible, quietly in secret at first, like I was doing something illegal. I looked up everything I could about fasting. Turns out, it's all over Scripture, not just tradition, warfare. A weapon. Jesus fasted, the disciples fasted, people fasted before battle, before making decisions, before deliverance. One verse hit me like a brick. This kind only comes out by prayer and fasting. Mark 9, verse 29. I realized then I had been fighting battles with my fists when the war was spiritual all along, but not everyone was happy about my change. Deshaun came by and started talking reckless. "You acting soft now? What's with this Jesus talk, bro? You sound like one of them church boys." And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. A few weeks after the hospital, I started waking up at 3 a.m. every night, on the dot, like an alarm I never set. At first I thought it was just my body still adjusting, but every time I opened my eyes, I felt like something or someone was in the room. Not threatening, but present. The air would be still but charged, like right before a thunderstorm. I'd sit there, heart pounding, staring into the dark, waiting for something to make sense. Then one night it happened. I was half asleep, laying there, when I felt this deep pressure in the room. Not physical, spiritual. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. It felt like my spirit was standing up inside of me, awake before my body. I heard a whisper, not in my ear but inside my chest. "Come back into the fast. I want to show you what's happening when my people deny themselves." I sat up, drenched in sweat. The voice didn't scare me. It humbled me. It cut through all the walls I'd built up. And I knew right then that voice wasn't mine, and it definitely wasn't from darkness. I started a second fast. This time it wasn't about proving anything. This one came from obedience. Day 2, I felt weak again, but not like before. This weakness came with a strange clarity. I found myself praying without planning to, crying without knowing why. I asked God to show me what He meant, to show me what happens when people fast. I didn't want good feelings or surface-level peace. I wanted truth. That night I had a dream, but it wasn't just a dream. I saw people, men and women, all in different places. A mother in her living room, a teenager on the floor of his bedroom, an old man in a prison cell. All of them were fasting. Their bodies looked worn, but around their spirits were these massive chains. Then, as each one prayed or cried out, I saw angels step into the scene and begin breaking the chains. Not gently, with force, violent, loud cracking. Light burst out of every link as it shattered. And then, in the middle of the dream, I saw myself, fasting again. This time I wasn't alone. Behind me stood Grandma Eloise, glowing, like heaven had rubbed off on her. She leaned down and whispered something in my ear. Fasting doesn't move God, it moves you into His will. It gives you eyes to see what's already been happening. I woke up shaking. From that moment on, I knew this wasn't just about me. Fasting wasn't a spiritual diet. It was a weapon in a war I didn't even know I was in. And now I had no excuse not to fight. After that dream, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I called Auntie Rochelle first, told her everything. The 3 a.m. wake-ups, the second fast, the vision of the chains breaking, even the part where Grandma Eloise whispered to me. I expected her to be emotional, but not like this. She cried, real tears, deep ones. Then she said, "I've been praying for this since you were 15. I knew God would get you. I just didn't know how." That hit different. She told me to talk to her pastor, Pastor Jameson, but I wasn't ready yet. I was still trying to process what was happening inside of me. It felt like I had stepped out of one life and into another, but no one else had moved. Like the world kept spinning, but I was now seeing all the gears behind the curtain. Tamika was gentle with me. She came by the house one night while I was listening to worship music, something I never used to do. She sat down beside me, just quiet. After a minute, she said, "I don't know who this is, but I like him." Then she smiled, almost like she was proud. That moment meant more than I could explain, but not everybody was on board. Marcus kept brushing it off. "Man, you went too deep into that fast stuff. It messed with your head. Get back to real life." I told him, "This is real life. Everything else was the lie." That made him go silent. We haven't really spoken since. Then there was Deshaun. He came through one night, uninvited, holding a bottle and talking like nothing had changed. He started lighting up and offered me some. When I refused, he laughed like I'd told the dumbest joke in the world. "You on that church boy tip now? Bro, we used to run streets together. What, you too good now?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Nah, I'm just not blind anymore." He got quiet, cold, told me I was fake, that I was going to come crawling back when life hit me again. But I knew he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at the mirror I was becoming. The hardest part, though, was me. I was the one who didn't know how to fit anymore. I didn't belong in the streets, but I didn't know how to walk fully in the spirit either. I felt like I was stuck between two worlds, not lost, but not home yet. I started journaling, praying out loud, reading more. Every time I fasted, even for one day, I felt the static clear and the signal get sharper. Like God was already speaking. I just finally tuned in. And even though I still had questions, one thing was clear. I wasn't who I used to be. I thought things would get easier the more I leaned into this new walk. I thought peace would roll in like waves once I started fasting, praying, reading scripture. But peace doesn't always come quietly. Sometimes it comes with war, and for me that war was just getting started. It began with my job. I had been working security at a strip mall, nothing fancy, just enough to keep bills paid. My boss, Mr. Coleman, no relation, always liked me because I showed up on time and minded my business. But once I started fasting on the job, skipping lunch breaks, reading the Bible in the little guard shack, people started noticing. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just didn't want to lose the rhythm God was building in me. One day he pulled me aside. "Darnell, you all right, son? You've been acting different." "I'm good, sir. Just growing, trying to get right with God." He blinked. "Well, try to get right off the clock." That was the first time I realized how uncomfortable faith could make people. Not because of what I said, but because of what I carried now. Then came the dreams. At first they were soft, just flashes of light, random scriptures I hadn't even read yet. But soon they turned intense. I saw people I hadn't thought about in years, folks from my past, faces I'd wronged, situations I had buried. Each night, something new would rise, and every morning I'd wake up feeling the weight of it. God wasn't just showing me what fasting did in the spirit, He was showing me myself. And that wasn't always pretty. One night, I dreamed I was walking down a dark hallway lined with mirrors. Each one reflected not who I was, but who I had pretended to be. The hustler, the charmer, the angry son, the runaway. And at the end of the hallway stood a man in white. He said, "You can't carry both. Pick up your cross or keep your mask." I woke up in tears. I knew what I had to do, start making things right. I called an old girlfriend I had ghosted, apologized, no strings. I reached out to a guy I used to sell to, just to say I hope he's clean now. I even drove by Grandma Eloise's old house, just to sit on the porch and pray like she used to. But with every move forward, resistance pushed back. Deshaun started spreading rumors that I'd gone crazy. A few people I used to call family stopped picking up my calls. Even Tamika, as supportive as she was, started pulling back. "I love you," she said one night, "but it feels like you're slipping away from us." I wasn't trying to leave anyone. I was just finally stepping into who I was supposed to be. And I knew. That came with a price. I didn't realize how lonely deliverance could feel. People talk about breakthrough like it's fireworks and hallelujahs, but sometimes it's just you, pacing your apartment at 2 a.m., whispering prayers through tears because you don't know who you are without your old chains. That's where I was. I remember sitting in my living room one night with the lights off, holding my phone in my hand, debating whether to call Marcus. We hadn't talked in weeks. I missed him, even if I knew we couldn't go back to how things were. He was the closest thing I had to a brother, but every time I tried to talk about what I was learning, what I was feeling, he'd roll his eyes or check out. Eventually, I stopped calling. Then Tamika pulled up unexpectedly one afternoon. She walked in without knocking, like old times, and sat on the couch like she had something heavy on her chest. "You fasting again?" she asked. "Yeah," she nodded slowly. "You talk to anybody about all this?" I told her no. "Just Auntie Rochelle sometimes." She took a deep breath and said, "I'm happy for you." "I am, but I don't know how to be around you anymore. You used to be the one I leaned on. Now it feels like you're in another world." That one hurt. I didn't blame her though. I was in another world, not physically, but spiritually. And it was hard to explain what it felt like to live in the middle of a shift nobody else could see. It's like being underwater while everyone else is breathing air. Same planet, different pressure. Later that week, I finally went to see Pastor Jameson. Auntie had been telling him about me for weeks, apparently. When I walked into his office, he stood up, smiled, and said, "Been waiting on you, son." I sat down and spilled everything. The NDE, the dreams, the chains, the fasting, the voice. He didn't flinch, just listened. Then he said something I'll never forget. "The wilderness is not a punishment. It's a proving ground. God's separating you so he can send you." That clicked something deep inside me. I wasn't being isolated to suffer. I was being set apart to be made ready. But the more I pressed in, the more I felt the weight of what I'd lost. Old comforts, familiar faces, even my own sense of control. And beneath all of it, fear. Fear that maybe I wasn't cut out for this walk, that maybe I was hearing wrong, that maybe this was all too much. One night, I cried out to God, for real, no filters. I said, "Lord, if this is you, please don't let me fall back. Please don't let me be fake. I've been fake my whole life. I don't want to go back." And in that silence, I felt peace, not answers, just peace. And sometimes that's all you need to keep going. I thought I had seen the worst of the spiritual warfare during my first fast, the chains, the shadows, the whispering demons. But that was just the introduction. It started with a dream, except it wasn't a dream. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard 3 loud knocks, like someone banging on my front door with a fistful of rage. I sat up, heart racing, but when I looked at the clock, it read 3 a.m. again. Same time, every time. I got up, checked the door, nothing, no one. But when I turned back toward my living room, I swear on everything, I saw something move across the wall. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light, a figure. I froze, and then I smelled it, rotten, like burnt rubber and wet ash. Suddenly, this deep pressure filled the room. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was being watched, not with curiosity, but with hatred. I dropped to my knees right there on the carpet and started whispering, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," and it left. Just like that. Peace returned. But I knew something had changed. The enemy wasn't trying to scare me anymore. He was trying to stop me. That same week, I started getting texts from random numbers, people from my past popping up out of nowhere, exes, old crew, even someone I hadn't heard from since high school asking to link up. All of them wanted to pull me back into something I had already walked away from. And not just people, thoughts started hitting me out of nowhere. Doubt, temptation, shame. "You think you're holy now? You really think God could use someone like you? Who are you kidding?" I began waking up with scratches on my shoulder. Real ones, thin lines, no explanation, no sharp edges on the bed, no nails long enough to do it myself. I didn't even show Auntie Rochelle. I didn't want her to worry. But I knew this was warfare. So I fasted again, not out of ritual, out of survival. This time I added prayer every 3 hours, like Daniel did in the Bible, morning, noon, night. I started playing worship music around the clock. I anointed my doors with oil. I called Pastor Jameson and told him everything. He prayed with me over the phone, and I could feel something shift as he spoke, like the air itself was clearing. Then came the vision. During a midday prayer, I was sitting on the floor, eyes closed, when I saw in my spirit a battlefield. But not like a movie. This was in the heavenlies. On one side were demons screaming in rage. On the other were angels, some holding swords, others holding what looked like scrolls and fire. In the center of the war was me, not fighting, but kneeling, fasting, praying. And from my posture, waves of light kept pushing the darkness back. After that vision of the battlefield, something shifted in me, not just spiritually, but emotionally. I wasn't just fasting and praying out of desperation anymore. I was moving with purpose. I finally understood that I wasn't just fighting for me. I was standing in the gap for others too. That realization hit hard one evening while I was praying for Marcus. I hadn't seen him since our falling out, but his name kept coming up in prayer. I'd try to skip past it, act like it was just a leftover thought, but the Holy Spirit wouldn't let me move on. Every time I opened my Bible, it felt like God was nudging me. Go after your brother. So I did. I pulled up to his place unannounced. He opened the door slow with that same what you want face he always had when something was bothering him. I could see it in his eyes. He was tired, not physically, but deep down. I'm not here to preach, I said. Just checking on you. He let me in. We talked for hours about everything. I told him what I'd seen, what I'd felt, what fasting had done for me. And for the first time, he didn't scoff. He just sat there, nodding, quiet. At the end, he looked down and said, "Man, I've been dreaming stuff too." That was the crack in the wall. A few days later, he called and asked if I'd help him do a one-day fast. I was shook. My boy, the one who mocked everything spiritual, was now asking to tap into the very thing that woke me up. That moment right there, that was fruit. That was proof. But it wasn't all unity and breakthroughs. Tamika was still distant. She'd check in with short texts or leave a meal at my door, but her warmth had cooled. I finally asked her why. She said, "I'm scared you're going to become someone I can't reach." I told her I wasn't above her. I was behind her, trying to catch up to the light she'd been walking in before me. She smiled at that, but I could still feel the wall. People want change until it starts changing them too. Even Deshaun circled back. I got a message from him late one night. Just said, "You still doing that Jesus stuff?" I didn't even hesitate. Yeah, stronger than ever. He left it on read, but I knew the seed had been planted. That's all I could ask for. Meanwhile, something was stirring at the church. Pastor Jameson had been following my progress closely. One Sunday, he pulled me aside and asked if I'd share my story during a midweek service. I was hesitant. I wasn't a preacher. I wasn't polished. I didn't have scriptures memorized or a theology degree. But he looked at me and said, "You don't need to explain the Bible. Just tell them what Jesus did. That's enough." That night, I stood in front of a small crowd and told my story. The NDE, the darkness, the chains, the fasting, the breakthrough. I saw grown men crying, women with their hands lifted, people coming up afterward asking how to start their own fast. It was like watching fire catch dry wood. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about deliverance. It was about assignment. God didn't just rescue me. He recruited me. I thought the hardest part of the journey was over. I thought once I stood up in church and shared my testimony, I'd feel free, steady, maybe even safe. I was wrong. Deliverance is a doorway, not a destination. And the more I walked forward, the more I realized the enemy doesn't give up ground without a fight. And neither does your old life. The choice came crashing down on me the night I got a call from a guy named Reggie. I hadn't heard that name in a minute. Reggie was deep in the streets, smart, calculated, dangerous. He used to be the guy behind the guys, the kind of man who didn't need to get his hands dirty because he had people who'd do it for him. He called me out of nowhere, said he'd heard I was cleaning up, that I was off the radar. But his voice wasn't mocking, it was cautious. "I got a situation," he said. "I need somebody I can trust. One job, quick money, real easy." I froze. This was it, the moment I hadn't realized I was still vulnerable to. He was offering more than cash. He was offering my old self back. That quick fix. That rush of control. That sense of being feared, respected. And part of me wanted it. I told him I'd call him back. For the next few hours, I paced the floor like I had fire under my feet. The spiritual part of me knew what was happening. This wasn't just a test. It was a trap. A snare set with my own desires. But the flesh, man, the flesh still remembered what that kind of power felt like. What it meant to never have to depend on anyone, not even God. I grabbed my Bible. I tried to read, but the words were blurry. My mouth was dry. My thoughts were loud. So I dropped to my knees and did the only thing I knew that could cut through the noise. I fasted. On the spot. Cold turkey. water only, no distractions. I needed clarity. By the next morning, I was weak in body but clear in spirit. I had a dream that night, short but heavy. In the dream, I was standing at a crossroads. Two paths, one dark and paved, the other wild and glowing with soft light. And Jesus was standing at the fork. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, like he already knew what I would choose. I woke up crying, and without hesitation, I blocked Reggie's number. That same day, my bank account went into overdraft. My phone was off by the weekend. Everything started falling apart. But inside, I had never been more sure of anything in my life. This wasn't about money. This was about mastery. Who would be my source, man or God? I chose God, and I knew, after that choice, nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks after I blocked Reggie's number were some of the hardest I'd ever lived through. I wasn't just broke, I was being stripped. One piece at a time, phone off, no work, lights flickering. I'd stretch a single meal across 2 days, and still I kept fasting. Not full fasts every day, but cycles. Mornings only, water only, 3 days in a row. Sometimes dry fasts for just one evening, just to silence my flesh. It wasn't religion, it was survival. But the real breaking point didn't come through lack, it came through confrontation. Auntie Rochelle called and asked if I could come help her fix a pipe under the sink. I came over, grateful just to do something. As soon as I walked in, I could tell the energy was off. Tamika was already there, sitting stiff on the couch. She barely looked at me. I kept it cool, joked with Auntie a bit, but I felt the air thicken. Finally, Tamika said, "We need to talk." We stepped outside. She crossed her arms, looked me dead in the face, and said, "What are you doing, Darnell?" "For real." I blinked. "You mean with my life?" "I mean with all this fasting, isolation, visions, dreams, demons. It's scaring people. It's scaring me." I didn't know what to say. She continued, "You've changed so much, I don't even recognize you. And I'm not saying it's all bad, but you don't laugh like you used to. You don't call like you used to. You act like we're distractions now. Is this what God wants? For you to lose everybody?" Her voice cracked. And right then I felt it, guilt. Not because I had done something wrong, but because I finally saw the cost. Obedience isn't free. It costs comfort, relationships, familiarity, and sometimes even people you love. I tried to explain, told her that God was doing something inside me I didn't fully understand either. That the fasting, the silence, the pulling away, it wasn't about abandoning anyone. It was about becoming the kind of man who could finally lead instead of always being led. She didn't respond. She just looked at me, eyes glossy, and whispered, "I miss my brother." That shattered me. I walked home that night feeling more alone than I had since the hospital. I dropped to my knees and said, "God, I'm trying. I really am. But I don't know how to carry all of this. I'm losing people. I'm losing myself." And right there, something bubbled up in my spirit. A verse I didn't even remember reading. "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me." Matthew 10:37-38. It wasn't condemnation, it was clarity. God was showing me, you're not being punished, you're being purified. I wasn't losing Tamika. I was being asked to love Jesus more. And that was the hardest decision of my life. The next few days were quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet before a storm. I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming. I didn't know if it would be physical, spiritual, emotional, but I knew I was about to be tested in a way I hadn't yet faced. Everything in me felt like a wire pulled tight. I went into a 3-day fast, water only, no phone, no music, no food. I stayed inside, curtains drawn, Bible open. I asked God one thing, show me who I really am, not the broken Darnell, not the hustler, not even the new me, just the truth. On the third night I had a vision. It wasn't dramatic, no flames, no angels, no battlefield. It was just a room, bright, still. I was seated at a table with one chair across from me. In walked a younger version of myself, maybe 12 or 13, the age right before everything started spiraling, before the lies, before the streets. He sat across from me and looked at me like he was trying to understand. "You made it out?" he asked. I nodded. He paused. "Did we lose everyone?" That hit me like a gut punch. I started to speak, but before I could, the light in the room changed, warmer, stronger, and a presence entered. I couldn't see him, but I knew. It was him, Jesus. I fell out of the chair in the vision, face to the ground. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, not out of fear, but out of sheer awe. And then I heard his voice. I never asked you to be perfect, Darnell. I asked you to follow. I wept in the vision, and I woke up weeping in real life. That night I realized the biggest battle wasn't demons or people or even the past. It was me, the shame I carried, the masks I wore, the pressure to be strong for everybody, that constant feeling that I had to earn my place in God's presence. But Jesus wasn't asking for strength, he was asking for surrender. The next day I finally met with Pastor Jameson again. I told him about everything, the vision, the fast, the silence. He nodded and said, "You're being positioned." "Positioned for what?" I asked. He looked at me dead in the eye. "To lead." I wanted to laugh. Me? A leader? I was just barely figuring out who I was. But deep down, I knew he was right. Later that night, I got a call from the church's youth ministry. One of the guys had backed out of a retreat. They needed someone last minute to give a testimony. 3 days away. Could I come? I almost said no. Almost let fear choke it out again. But something inside me stood up tall. Not proud, just sure. "Yes," I said, "I'm in." That was the final stretch of the old me dying. Not with drama, not with noise, but with obedience. Because obedience is the real altar, and that's where I left everything behind. I'll never forget that night at the retreat. The place was out in the woods, 2 hours outside Atlanta. Quiet, simple. Just a circle of cabins, a small chapel, and maybe 40 teenagers, most of them trying to act cool but clearly hungry for something real. The youth pastor introduced me with a short, "He's been through some stuff," and handed me the mic. I stood up, heart thumping like a drum in my chest, and for a moment, I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood what this was. This wasn't about a speech. This wasn't about me. This was about a transfer. God had taken me through fire, not to impress people, but to pull them through it too. So I started from the beginning. The fast, the collapse, the NDE, the chains, the darkness, Grandma Eloise, the whispers, the battle, the call to Jesus, the dreams, the loss, the loneliness, the vision of my younger self, the surrender. I didn't preach, I testified. And I watched as eyes that were dead with boredom came alive. I saw one young man, looked maybe 16, start crying halfway through. Another bowed his head like he was trying to disappear into the pew. A few of them came up afterward and said they'd never fasted before, but they were going to try. And right there in that chapel that smelled like old pine and spilled soda, I felt it. The weight lift, not just off me, off the whole room. I stepped outside after, needing air. I looked up at the stars and felt this overwhelming sense of presence. Not goosebumps, not emotion, presence. Like heaven itself had settled around me. I dropped to my knees, hands open, and I prayed the rawest prayer I'd ever prayed. God, I give it all up. My name, my plans, my future, even my pain. I don't want any of it unless you're in it. Make me into whatever you need to be. Just don't leave me. And I heard him again, not out loud, but so deep in my spirit I couldn't question it. I never left, I've been waiting. At that moment something broke, but it didn't feel like breaking. It felt like birthing. Like everything I'd been through, the loss, the fire, the fasting, the isolation, had been pushing me through a narrow passage, not to destroy me, but to deliver me. I stood up different. Not because anything around me changed, but because everything inside me had. That weekend I got asked to mentor 3 of the young guys. Then the youth pastor pulled me aside and said, "You ever thought about going into ministry?" I laughed, but something in me whispered, "Yes." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was chasing something. I felt sent. That's what the climax of my story was. Not fireworks, not applause, not even answers. Just Jesus. Steady, unshaken, waiting for me on the other side of surrender. And that's when I finally understood what fasting really does. It doesn't change God. It changes you until you can finally hear the voice that's been calling your name all along. It's been almost a year since that first fast knocked me out of my old life and into something I never saw coming. If you had told me back then, when I was hustling, angry, spiritually deaf, that I'd be waking up to pray before the sun, mentoring young men, and finding peace not in money or approval, but in silence with God, I would have laughed in your face. But that's the power of surrender. See, people think transformation is a flash of light and a dramatic turn, but most days it's quiet. It's waking up and choosing obedience when nothing in your flesh wants it. It's saying no to the old version of you over and over and over again. It's fasting when your body says eat, praying when your mind says doubt, worshiping when your soul feels tired. Fasting didn't just discipline my flesh, it exposed it. And underneath all that noise, I found my spirit, my real self, the one God made, not the one the world built. I still get tempted, still have days where I miss the ease of the old ways. But the difference now, I know who's with me. I know that when I fast, I'm stepping into the Spirit. I'm not just skipping food, I'm tearing down strongholds. I'm not just saying no to cravings. I'm saying yes to clarity. And the more I walk in that, the more I see God using my story to help others. Marcus is coming around. He's on his own journey now, still skeptical but softer. Tamika and I are rebuilding. It's not perfect, but she's starting to see I didn't leave her. I left the version of me that was breaking everything we both loved. As for me, I've started training for ministry. Nothing official yet, but I know what I heard in that vision. Follow. And that's what I'm doing, one step at a time. So if you're watching this and wondering what fasting really does, this is what it does. It clears the static. It crushes the noise. It breaks chains in places you didn't even know were locked. And if you've been running like I was, running from truth, from purpose, from pain, or even from God Himself, maybe today's the day you stop. Maybe today's the day you start your fast, not for show, not for tradition, but because something in your soul is tired of pretending. Trust me, God hears hunger, not just in your belly, but in your spirit, and He will meet you in it, just like He met me. If this story stirred something in you, don't leave without dropping a comment. Tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and share this with someone you know who's searching for more. This might be the video that opens their eyes. And if you're ready, start your fast. Jesus is already waiting.